NTO, NTDO 212, com check.
CPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
When he opened his eyes, he found himself sitting at a desk in front of a laptop computer. A red haze colored the room. He squinted at the blurry text on the computer screen, but couldn't focus his eyes to read it. He stood on unsteady feet. His body felt uncoordinated and his legs lurched in a stiff, awkward motion when he walked. The apartment and its furnishings were unfamiliar. He slowly dragged his feet across the floor and scrutinized everything in the room.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Sound Podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host. The audio that we are hearing right now is from narrator Erin Miller from the new audiobook, Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away, available on Amazon's Audible platform. While you are going and checking that out, everybody, make sure to stop on by audibletrial.com/talking sound to get 30 days of Audible free. So go on by, check that out, start your Audible account, download this book. It's pretty amazing. It's great stuff. Our guest today is the narrator, Erin Miller. Erin, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, how you doing? I'm doing quite well.
Fantastic. Well, how is it? Let's kind of start getting in a little bit into how you became a narrator to begin with, and what brought you down into the world, really, of voice acting, voice narration, and voice for audiobooks.
Yeah, so, basically, several years back, almost 10 years ago, I started off as a spoken word artist and was kind of getting into the realm of spoken word and performance, and, also kind of found out about hip hop and, the awesome elements that are involved in hip hop, but mostly was kind of trying to figure out ways to hone my craft. And my stepmom actually suggested that I go to this school in the UK called Emerson College, which is a Steiner-based school.
Yep.
And that school teaches storytelling. And so for me, that was something I was extremely interested in at the time, coming from a background of, storytellers through my dad's side of the family, as well as my mom's side of the family. And, so I went through this course, it's a 3-month intensive course that I basically went through and, came out of that, with these huge amount of techniques as to, best tell stories with. And, it was years later, was actually last year, I was in South by Southwest there in Austin, Texas. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine, Alex, and my artist, RXN Simon, and we're hanging out at their house after we'd finished up our day in Austin, and I would every evening tell a free-form story to my friend Alex's daughter, and my friends were like, hey man, like this is really cool, and like they would sit around too and like listen to me tell the story, and they were getting all excited about it, and they kind of suggested to me like, man, you should really get into doing audiobooks and narration and voice acting. I was like, well, it's always something that I wanted to do. And I kept making excuses as to why I, wasn't able to or whatever, but then realized that I just needed to buck up and make it a reality. So, within the last, year and a half, I've basically signed up with ACX and, started, doing auditions and finally locked in a book that I really liked, the author and the writing style. And, also the story content as well. Horror isn't generally my genre that I kind of gravitate towards, but it definitely, as far as, writers go, there's a lot of good writers and a lot of writers working on becoming good writers that are on ACX. So, I basically chose Chris because I really dug, the style of writing. And so from there, I, created this new book, Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away. And, I'm pretty stoked to be sharing that with people at this time.
Yeah, and what I love is that this is not your first calling. It's not what you necessarily professionally did for most of your life. This is something that you just kind of naturally found your way to through what you were already doing. That is so often the case. That's one of my favorite things to point out on this show is the true barrier to entry for most of these fields. It's quite literally curiosity.
Yeah.
You know?
It truly is, and it's definitely a journey too in the process of really kind of finding the niche where you can kind of link into something. And it was, it's just one of those things that was innately there. And, throughout the years, I mean, I'd had friends tell me do, voice acting, audiobooks. And I hadn't really listened until that last time around. And, it just kind of made sense as well as another opportunity for me to, basically engage the skills and tools that I learned throughout the years. And it's been a fun journey so far, and I'm looking forward to doing many more books to come.
Well, and it's interesting though because it's a very specific style of narration. Like I've been doing my shows for a smooth 6 years now. I did work before that, but behind a microphone. Never went to journalism school or anything like that.
Right.
But it's as opposed to like my wife who teaches improv comedy, extemporaneous thinking, that realm of voice acting, voice work, where it's like, okay, give us that take, but more excited.
Right.
That's not necessarily what you are doing here, nor is it like NPR style narration. It's much more like what you learned at Emerson College, where it is traditional storytelling.
There is subtle differences, but it's kind of a clear difference between what you're kind of referring to there as editing, and also having someone as an editor kind of be like give me more of this, or make this happen, where I'm just applying a lot of the tools that I've learned from storytelling and also from spoken word and being a hip hop artist through the year to the format of this. And I think that's why I've been getting such good responses with a lot of authors hitting me up through ACX is
absolutely
recognizing that it's not I do this for the love of storytelling, and I'm passionate about what I do, where it seems like there's from what I've been told that there's a lot of authors out there that are just looking to make money off this, where obviously that's a goal of mine as well, but it's also I want to find the right books to narrate, because there's something about the written word, it has to fit what I my style and what I want.
Absolutely. And, one of my favorite people, I have, even though I threw a commercial for Audible, I shamefully dropped my Audible account like a year or so ago and just recently redid it. Like I was telling you before the show, I don't even have the password for it right now. But quite literally, I listened to audiobooks like crazy because I loved them. It was a different form of entertainment. I didn't really like listening to the radio a whole lot. I loved talk radio. But what I really loved was like old school radio dramas. And I know whenever we first chatted and we were talking about things, I directed you to Magus Elgar, one of the shows that is on my network. And Kennedy Phillips has done some great work. I know he just landed a gig doing a sci-fi audio drama, so I can't wait to hear that. But that's what I'm saying exciting. Is that like that's a different style of voiceover. What I do for people's intros and outros for shows, or for commercial work, is something totally different than storytelling. And there is a specific meter and sound to somebody that knows how to storytell. And when an author hears that, when they hear those words come back in that way, like it's a hook like no other, because I could go and read a book. It's going to be different. I'm not a storyteller, man. Like, I took some acting classes. Like, I took drama in high school and junior high and some in college, stuff like that. You know, I have acted, but I am by far not a narrator.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, it's when people talk about voice acting, narration, there's like a combination, I think, that comes along with, really being a good, narrator, or often I'll see a lot of the times, instead of it saying narrated by, it actually says performed by, and then, the title of the narrator. Because in essence, it is more of a performance than you just necessarily regurgitating the words that are on the page.
Sure.
Because, that would just generally be pretty boring if you were just to read it kind of in a monotone, voice throughout the whole thing without any characterization or acting with your voice as well. And, I think it's just, blending a bunch of tools from those backgrounds. And, you have a nice voice, so I think you would probably be able to very quickly fit into a narration kind of situation because of also your background and skill set. And there's just, there's also a lot of people that are trying to do the narrating thing that, will take a lot more work for them to be able to be a good narrator. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's kind of one of those things where it is a multiplicity of different skill sets from those backgrounds. But being either an actor, storyteller, or someone as a voice character, those are really strong backgrounds that can help, apply yourself into being a better narrator as well.
Yeah, precisely. And what I love is, like you were saying, you had some experience in hip hop, obviously behind a microphone, things like that. But when it came to doing this, you had zero experience, but you did not let that hold you back or limit you in any way as far as going out there and doing it.
It's an interesting thing because, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of this, audiobook narration, and, it's very similar in the realm of, music. You got to promote yourself. You've got to, make sure that you're recording your stuff with, high quality equipment. You got to make sure that you're branding yourself. I mean, there's a lot of crossovers from the music industry into the audiobook, industry that basically, I had a lot of the tools already from doing the other, projects that they now kind of just blended over into me doing audiobooks, which was a huge bonus because it kind of gave me a step up in the realm of being able to kind of move quickly into getting books that I wanted to narrate, basically, because I also know the jargon and how to sell it to authors, that might be hesitant or uncertain. And then I do an audition for them and they're like, wow, I really like this. But this part, I'm like, hey, I can adapt my voice to anything that you want. And, I learned, basically it's kind of the hustle that, we experience in a lot of these kind of industries is, you need to know how to, interact with the clients, but also know how to be personable and also to, present a high quality product. So that's why I work with another producer that basically mixes and masters my stuff, because that's not one of my, skill sets, but, that's a person that I'd worked with from doing hip hop that just basically kind of stepped into place, and we're pumping out, high quality auditions at this point, which is good too.
Yeah, precisely. And it really is the fact of surround yourself with the correct people. You would be surprised what you can do just meeting people online, working with people, having people work with you, working in a cross-promotional aspect even.
Right.
You do some voiceover work for them whenever they have clients that need doing. It's funny you mentioned that. That's exactly how that's kind of worked out. I just got an advertisement through them. So no, precisely. Yeah. And that's just it. It really is. People forget the fact that so much of this, it really is. And I myself, even as a business owner, lean on the example all the time that I give people with podcastcadet.com, stuff like that. It is like being a part of a band. It really is. And you can depend on a bassist who drinks every Tuesday to go out and put flyers up for Friday's show, but is that really the dude that you want to throw the flyers in the hand of? The show's Friday. Shouldn't they be up on Tuesday? You know what I mean?
Be up a month beforehand.
So
but
yeah,
I
well,
get the point.
yeah, it's just the fact of like delegate things. Don't be afraid to delegate things. So many times we have a fear that things are going to cost us money to delegate, and like we're saying here, you can work out swaps with people. You're talking about somebody's talent working with your talent. So
that's it.
Yeah,
collaboration is definitely a huge part of the process of being a creative type, and in pretty much a lot of industries as well. And yeah, definitely having people that you can do trades with. I spent a lot of, the last 10 years basically kind of focusing on that specifically because I didn't really have a lot of income or, budget to pay for a lot of things. So I was able to get a lot of things for trade or exchange. I have a lot of high valued contacts and network that I built over time. But I also started coming to the realization that, with that, a lot of the time, sometimes you're not necessarily getting the quick turnaround that you may need. So I've kind of reevaluated and, still utilize that aspect of exchange and trade because it is still very valuable. But I also now, with a lot of other avenues of income and stuff, I work a lot to be able to bring in money so that I can actually pay for things and also demand, deadlines. And where trade, sometimes you can't necessarily always demand deadlines with people because they're on their own schedule. But when you hire someone to do something, it becomes that reality of like, okay, cool, this needs to be done by this time, and it's a job. Yeah. So that's kind of where I've got with stuff because I'm moving so fast with so many different projects that I need to be able to hire that stuff. But I'm still hiring from my groups of people that I have created as my network. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's how we try to support each other is to pay each other when you can. And if you can't right then or you got some exchange, then make that happen as a reality. Yeah. So, no, it's definitely a dynamic around that aspect of, exchange, but also money is just as valuable as well.
Oh, well, absolutely. But, like you were saying just a minute ago, until you hit a certain point, you're going to go through those rungs dealing with authors, dealing with stuff until you find an author that likes working with you and is basically just going to be like, hey, I got a new book coming out in a few months. You ready to put it on tape?
Right.
Which can happen. It's no different than being familiar with your studio techs, them knowing that you're a great drummer or a well-versed guitarist and going in and laying down studio tracks.
That's it. But
what it takes is proper promotion. What it takes is having your ducks in a row. And let's talk about that for just a minute because I think that's something really, because even going to like ACX, everybody, just so you know, is like the basically it's like the back end of Amazon Audible and Amazon Publishing Services. It's where you go to publish a book, publish an audiobook, put up music for sale, what have you. It's selling digital products and services through Amazon and creating a direct connection between creators and those who need the creators. It's really kind of cool. There are a few rungs and hoops to jump through, and I want to say I'm already registered as a voiceover artist there. I need to look into that again. I did that a few years ago and then ended up spending most of my time living on the road. But it's interesting the way that they even have their demand on equipment. They have their minimum requirements that you have to have, things like that. So like you were saying earlier, to lean on your previous experience in hip-hop when it came to the technology and already having some of that. Is
also knowing the quality that they're looking for specifically. And, I think the biggest thing that, both of us are kind of referring to is just having a very strong, a strong team that you develop over time that, you can rely on. It's, I tried to do everything, by myself for years, and, occasionally pay for stuff when I, needed it, or would, ask, for favors from people. But I was, struggling to, I was running an entertainment company, trying to run my band. I was managing about 4 bands plus booking another 15 bands, doing touring, and then also running event production and stage management, as well as hosting. And I was starting to lose my mind. And I didn't have, a ton of people that were willing to step in for free and, help out. But then, eventually over time, when I started building trust in these relationships, more and more people were like, hey, we see what you're doing, and we see you working hard. We would love to donate our time and help out. And, those people that just came in and did that for free back in the day are the people now that I hire to do the job, because I can know and trust them and work with them. So it's, it really is about building a strong team, no matter what industry you are in, and being able to, communicate with them on a good level and utilize their skill sets, because you don't want to have to be doing everything yourself, because it will drive you crazy. And, I was definitely stressed out and, working 60 plus hours, pretty much every week. And it was just, draining. And now I'm, I work a maximum of 30 to maybe 40 hours a week. And I have a lot of people doing stuff for me, so I can actually just focus on creating content and being creative, as, the artist type like to do.
Yeah, precisely. And, too many balls in the air can really sometimes make you lose focus on the one that you're supposed to be watching.
Exactly.
Not that the others don't need watching too, folks, but you can definitely be like, hey, do me a favor, watch that ball.
Yeah. It's going to land at some point, and I need to make sure it goes into the right place when it does.
That's right. That's right. And it may just be the fact that's not the ball that you're supposed to be carrying.
That's right. Yeah, that's the reality, I think, behind all of that is, knowing that I'm not strong at, videography or photography and graphic design.
Yeah. It's
really knowing your strengths and weaknesses, I think, in the regard when you're, when you do have a team, or if you're looking to have a team, or just even when you're, just by yourself, maybe having to hire some freelance people to do stuff for you. It's really just knowing where your strengths are and where your energy is best spent, because energy and time is money in essence. But it also is good to expand your skill set, but also to know, is it going to make sense for me to learn how to do this entire thing, or is it going to make more sense for me to hire someone to do that so that I can focus on getting the content ready to put out there?
Yeah.
And for me as an artist, it became more and more clear to me that it just made sense to hire people or get people on your team that are capable of doing those things that you're just not as strong at. And instead of trying to allocate all this time to learn how to do that, where then in the end your art or your product is actually suffering because of that, that's where you create that sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice can be valuable because you can utilize that skill set for long term in the future. So that's just, it's evaluating what makes sense for your time and energy. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and that is highly essential in any production environment, whether it be the hip-hop studio or print production of a book, or even audio production. Because whenever you're talking about an audio book coming out, frequently that is coming out in addition to a digital version, in addition to a hardback and paperback version.
Right.
And it's one of those, much like starting a band or anything, you don't really want to hodgepodge the way that you release things.
You want
to kind of bombard Google on the same day with, hey, Google, we now have a Facebook and a Twitter and a YouTube and a website. Launch them all on one day, and you'll be surprised how fast you were at the top of Google. Sincerely. And then just keep posting regularly, and it will happen.
It's a real thing. And it's also making sure that you're delivering a product that is of high quality, but also something that's interesting to your audience. and people that are listening, and also finding out who your audience is. That's also a kind of huge valuable thing. So, when you are targeting ads or anything like that, or even just, going online to, do research, you got to really know who's wanting to listen or see or, experience what it is that you're putting out there. So that's definitely a high value as well as knowing your demographic.
And let's get into that for just a minute, because you would not necessarily be the one that Huggies would hire to do a commercial. You know,
right.
Like you don't hear the voice of Mayhem doing a Huggies commercial.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Yet again, it is good to be dynamic. You know what I mean?
If you got range, go for it.
Know your strength and your weaknesses.
Well, I posted a picture the other day of Macho Man Randy Savage, and I was like, is it just so wrong of me, the fact that I want to say, Alexa, have Macho Man Randy Savage read me children's stories? I just want to hear it. And then somebody was like, write the Alexa skill. And that just led to a day-long rabbit hole.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there is one of those kind of rarities that I came across the other day. I listen to a ton of audiobooks, and I have a few favorite narrators that I listen to often. But I came across one of my favorite books that I've read, The Shadows of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, was actually narrated. The book itself was narrated by the lead singer of Korn. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that band. They came out, I think it was like the mid to late 90s. And, they're kind of like a metal rock band. And I was extremely surprised at how well he narrated the book and did all the voices. So there is those kind of like obscure moments when you take someone and be like, well, I really don't know if they would be able to be a narrator for this book, but he did an amazing job. I think it actually won some awards and stuff as well. The book's also quite fantastic, but there is those kind of obscure moments when, yet again, as we kind of mentioned earlier, that crossover happens. It's like you've been using your voice, in a multiplicity of ways as a performer, that when you're asked to do something that might be out of the range of what you thought you would normally be able to do, that actually you can fit really well into the niche of what people are looking for or what they want from you to do. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about, being a performer and, voice person or singer or front person, is it supplies a lot of these skills that we utilize in, voice acting, voiceover kind of stuff. And it's amazing how that happens. But then again, that's probably also a rarity in certain people's professions.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, one of my favorites, like I was saying earlier, I used to, before the digital age, listen to a lot of books on tape. And back in the day, let me see if I can say this without butchering it. John Delancier narrated quite a bit, known to most folks as Q from Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he had quite the voiceover career when it came to old school books, things like that. I think I still have a tape of The Invisible Man that he narrated somewhere. But it's like you were saying, to find your demographic, find those people that are looking for your style specifically. How do you go about doing that as an artist? Is it I guess you're going through ACX, through that system. I'm sure that you're looking into getting representation, things like that will be courting people. But
yeah, in essence, I haven't really gotten to, spend as much time recently into that realm of interaction, but also, trying to get someone to represent me would be ideal. I'm just kind of, with everything I have going on with my music at this time, I have to kind of split my energetics with, putting, this chunk of time into my music and then this chunk of time into the narration. But I find that a lot of the ways I go about kind of like weeding through the masses is it's more of like finding what I really enjoy to narrate. And, also I have a very, succinct questions that I ask when approaching authors, even before I do an audition, because I felt a lot of the times in the past that when I'm doing auditions, I would go, send out all these auditions, and there's just a lot of the times there's just not people responding. Authors aren't as responsive as us narrators might like. And, so I just basically ask a slew of questions to kind of really weed out the people that aren't even there, and also to really, fine tune on getting the authors that are interested in my style of narration. I've got a lot of my samples up online that they can, review, and, from different styles and different genres. And I'm trying to expand through as many genres as possible, because I'd love to be able to narrate all kinds of things just to challenge myself. But I also don't want to be wasting time on submitting auditions in categories that people might not even want my style of voice for what they're looking for. They might put notes on there or whatever through the ACX platform, but often they're, minimal amount of information that is put up there. So I basically just ask all the questions that I need to know to do my best audition, and for them to also review my account and see if I'm the right fit for their book. Because then it just saves both of us a ton of time. Because, any audition can take anywhere from, 15 to 30 minutes for me to do, or all the way up to about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the length of the audition. So that's kind of how I go through the process of eliminating, but also seeking out more of the authors and the styles of books that I want to do. And also, working with inside of a demographic. I would say that, doing audiobook narration, it's a wide demographic. You know what I mean? It's because people that want to listen to audiobooks are going to listen to audiobooks, but also there's all different types of people within audiobook listeners that want to listen to different types of audiobooks, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I look at it, is weeding through the mass of books that are out there, because there is a lot on ACX.
Oh, there's
also
ton.
a lot of competition too.
There's a ton. I remember whenever I got into Audible a few years ago, whenever I first started going on the road was when I started doing Audible pretty hardcore. And in the last year, I've been trying to do a lot more meditation, things like that. So I dropped some of that stuff. And it was one of those that my wife listens to, like comedies, that kind of stuff. I'll go out and get a book on like astrophysics.
Yeah. I'm interesting enough. That's something that I'm interested in, and also have auditioned for stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. Like, you wouldn't think that would be a book on tape, folks, but it is. Right. It's out there.
But it is. Yeah.
And it's a whole new world, a whole new way of learning. It's great. One of my favorite things is actually, and this is not even a plug, I get nothing from this. But if you're an Amazon Prime member, folks, and you have not found the Great Courses series, go get it. It's like $7.99 a month, but it's like 13-part lecture series, tons of them.
I actually subscribe to that myself. Actually, I'm currently listening to 3 different great course series right now myself. So.
And it's so great that things like that are out there, that people like you are out there doing this kind of stuff. What is the importance of a proper press kit for something like this? Because it's something that I always tried to instill in the bands that I worked with, was if you're taking yourself seriously, you should at least have a press kit. Something that I try.
EPKs, I guess, is another crossover thing. It's interesting because I've definitely, put some thought into what that means. And ACX kind of sets it up where you kind of have that through your profile in an essence.
Sure.
So you kind of fill out some of the information. I know that I need to definitely put a little bit more effort into kind of revamping my platform's, kind of look and appeal. But I, made sure that when I first signed up with them, that I did something that was appealing to a broad spectrum of people, as well as, having some good. But I think, it's good. And it's an important thing to have an EPK. I haven't delved too far into the realm of more like, voiceover, voice acting stuff for, commercials or
studio work, that
stuff,
kind of stuff.
TV work, exactly, where that would be a highly valuable thing in that realm of that existence. Just as, as a band, I have a great EPK. I spent a good chunk of money on getting, nice graphic design. And, so it definitely is an important thing. But I think if you're just, focusing necessarily on ACX or maybe just one or two of these, digital release platforms, that, just making sure that you have the best information about yourself, on there. I think my biggest selling point is the fact that I never thought I would say this, funnily enough, but I have a certificate of storytelling, which I never really thought would be an applicable thing when applying for a job.
Yeah, right. That's one of those I paid to be a minister online too. So what of it?
Oh, that is what I do for a living.
But that's what's interesting though, is that there's to be certified in storytelling, folks. It is technically a lost art. There are so few people who know the proper way to tell a story.
It is a lost art in essence, because how much we've moved towards TV and the mainstream media. But I think it's having its big resurgence with the fact that audiobooks are such a big thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been looking at there's huge competitions and awards that are given, and there's millions of listeners out there that love listening to audiobooks. So that's in an essence the way that storytelling is having its resurgence, and also through people like yourself that support other storytellers and voice actors to do podcasts you don't have any visual representation. So I think there's such a beauty to storytelling, because the spoken word and the element of being able to invoke people's imagination is such a powerful thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to enforce that even more, I was literally having the conversation earlier today with a potential client. Well, I should just say client now. We shook hands. It's all done. But we were talking about intro and outro music, things like that.
Yeah.
And he was talking about numerous concepts, and I was like, I live off one concept. Your intro and outro music is a handshake.
Yeah.
It's a warm hug. I myself am a raging fan of Coast to Coast AM. Don't know if you've ever listened to the program. Been on for 20, 25 years now. Probably closer to 30, actually. But the largest listened to program in the world after 10 p.m. Phenomenal show. They talk about UFOs, all kinds of wild stuff. But the intro music to that is, I want to say it's from Logan's Run. It's some piece by Ennio Morricone. But it's one of those, you could be in any room of your house with the radio tuned in, waiting for the show. And when you hear that, it's like, oh man, I'll do the dishes in a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's they're only coming on the air for 30 seconds to tell you what the 4 hours of programming is about tonight. And then they're going to 5 minutes of commercial. But whatever it was, you stopped what you were doing to pay attention to that 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a branding, though.
It is.
If you look at it in that way, where it's like, that music, that sound basically is notifying you that that's what's happening. You know what I mean? So if you're a fan or a follower of that, so it's just a distinct, trademark, basically.
Yep.
You're like, that's the music that I have as my intro and outro. So when people hear it, they're like, oh, that's so-and-so. They're going on right now. You know what I mean? Or, oh, I totally know who that person is by the music. You know what I mean? They don't even have to hear you speak yet, So it's a valuable thing to have, for sure.
Well, and it's also the fact of there are voices that do the same thing. Robert Stack comes to mind. Rod Serling, Alfred Hitchcock, where just the way that they presented things, the way that the gravitas that their voice had. Orson Welles is another one. But in addition to that, it's also the fact of, as a video producer, I've told people for years, if you can't close your eyes and enjoy the story, we got a really big problem.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of blind people sitting out in living rooms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I kind of think that's become a great social issue in a lot of ways, and it kind of saddens me in the aspect that it feels like no one's willing to engage their imagination anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because we're hand fed all of this, you know, visual imagery. So, you know, it's like when you try to even get kids these days interested in storytelling or audiobooks, particularly here in the U.S., that they're very resistant to it. And you know, it's an interesting thing, you know, to get them to pull away from their, you know, constant gratification, instant gratification that's in their hands, and to engage in something where they actually have to use their imagination, which is sad to me because I know, you know, I'm not very old or anything, but, you know, I'm 34, but I, you know, grew up in an era where we didn't have cell phones as kids, and storytelling was a huge thing. You know, one of my big mentors and greatest teacher, Clive Fairweather from the UK, well, he's a professional storyteller, and I guess that's kind of the reason why I do what I do. But it's also a great way to be able to teach people stuff, and it's just tragic to me that we've kind of moved so far away from the oral tradition of being able to tell stories to each other and actually sit there and listen to one another. I mean, I struggle with even just getting my friends to like sit down for more than a few minutes and like have a conversation without one of them looking at their cell phones.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I almost want to go around with a basket and be like, all right, everyone, put your cell phones in the basket. Right now, we're going to actually have a time where we listen to each other. Oh, well, is that odd to you? Okay.
I went on a date about 10, 12 years ago before my wife and I were really a thing. We dated a couple times, but I went on a date with a girl and a couple of her friends and their boyfriends and stuff. And I sat at the table for about 15 minutes. And they were all on their phones. And I literally I was like, excuse me, I'll be right back. Nope. I straight up ghosted, dude.
Yeah.
I
don't blame you.
I can't even go through this night. Like,
yeah. I mean, it just for me, it's like it just could tell that they have really no interest in engaging with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I'm, you know, referring to in this regard of like, you know, have your phone in your back pocket, but listen to a book. You know what I mean? Like, take the time to disengage from, you know, being fed the story, the imagery, and to letting your imagination be, you know, tantalized. And it's something that I think when you ask people to imagine stuff these days, they're like, well, show me a picture or show me an image. It's like, no, use your imagination. That's like almost it doesn't like compute in some people.
Yeah.
They don't understand what imagination is anymore. And it's sad, you know? And I'm like, wow, really? Like I can freestyle to you right now something of a one word topic that you could give me. And I could freeform it from my imagination into something, you know what I mean? And I know that that's not a common gift in everybody's, you know, realm of you know, experience. But, you know, I definitely remember having conversations with people where, you know, we were asked to engage our imagination in school or in creative, you know, environments. And people were quite a bit more capable of doing it back when I was in high school and stuff because cell phones were a thing, but we didn't have, you know, internet and screens that were constantly with YouTubing stuff. And you know, so it was just a different realm of existence.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, my wife herself teaches improv, sketch comedy, things like that. And she says all the time, one of the rules is, doesn't matter if it's an apple. If I say I'm holding a dog in the palm of my hand, that's a dog, dude. For the rest of this scene, till the lights go out and we say scene, this thing in my hand is a dog.
It's a dog.
You're going to react like it's a dog. We're going to act like it's going to smell like it's a dog when I put it up next to your face here in a second. And yeah, people have really lost that connection. We've really lost the concept. We talk a lot about that in my show, Dudes and Beer, about the fact of just the way that society has moved. We have moved away from this, people make fun of me, but I am more prone to believe an Aboriginal story about Bigfoot than any scientist telling me Bigfoot does not exist.
Yeah.
They've been telling this story for thousands of years, so don't tell me.
Yeah, that it's not real.
This is storytelling. That is how their history was passed on.
That's right. The oral tradition.
We've lost that. That takes literally the attention of, okay, kids, gather around. We're going to tell this story now, and you're going to learn it. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because, in the Druidic tradition, it was one of their, I think they had 4 or 5 sects that were part of the Druids that existed, and one of them was the Bardic tradition. And as a bard, you were required verbatim, word for word, every traditional historical story from your predecessor. And you would have to be able to learn to recite that word for word. And then also including learning how to be a musician, free-form poet. And it was a huge responsibility within inside of your clan or group, your town that you lived within, because you were basically looked on as the historian and also the entertainer and also the truth speaker. Yeah. And it's one of those traditions that, has pretty much been completely lost. And in America, I don't think ever really did exist. And, in Europe, I spent a lot of time over there. There's a lot more storytelling and, things of that ilk that go on over there. But it's still waning because of modern technology and the evolution that has become of that technology, which has taken us away from engaging our imagination and letting us wander through that infinite realm of imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we really do have to be present of mind and willing to step away from that for a little while. Willing to go back all of a generation or two, folks. Mm-hmm. Like, my dad didn't have TV for most of his life.
Yeah.
He's in his
like
70s.
I said, I didn't really have cell phone. I didn't even own a cell phone myself personally until I was almost 19 or 20.
Yeah, like, it wasn't because the TVs didn't exist. They just weren't a means to have one.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Now if you go out with 4 people to dinner and a movie, you could go out and buy a decent TV.
That's a real thing. Yeah,
like, that's a thing. That's a thing.
Attachment.
Yeah, like come on. So it's interesting to see and to have this conversation about how technology has really changed the way that we process. This what was once every day for us. If you remember back in the day, folks gathered around the radio to hear their stories. And
even before that, it was everyone would gather around the hearth,
and tell stories.
The meaning of that has greater and deeper roots than we even know on ourselves. But, it's the heart of the home, a place where people would gather and, stare into the fire or gather around a fire, if you're outside. And that's where the commencement of storytelling would take place. And, it is one of those things where and definitely, anyone listening, there is storytelling festivals that do, exist within inside of the United States and throughout the world. And I think in essence, there is a certain demographic of people that still gravitate towards that. But I think that here in the U.S. that it lacks a lot in the realm of, of really being attentive to storytelling. I think people are just so easily distracted, here, and going back to the technology, that's one existence of that. But I feel like in a lot of ways, culturally, we don't listen to each other as much as we used to. Yep. And that might have to do with media and stuff as well. But there's also this detachment that's been taking place that, in an interesting aspect of, storytelling as we talk about social media. That was like one of your biggest social engagements of either the evening or the week would be to gather around and listen to each other tell stories and to socialize in that format and express ourselves in a way where people could relate to us in a more interpersonal connection that I feel like is greatly lacking with inside of our culture. And in essence, of the reason why I do what I do is to hopefully re-engage people in that and also to reach out to people so that they can also communicate and engage with the people just directly around them because, social media is not real. it's not real.
No,
it's not human interaction.
No.
Going back to that is important.
It's limited social interaction.
Limited.
It's very little social interaction. Most of it is just screaming into void. And even then, that is only healthy up to an extent. It really is that conversation that's needed, and that care, that compassion between people to stop, listen, to hear each other's stories.
Right.
Once again, one of the things that we talk about a lot in my other podcast is the concept of compassion. It literally means to suffer alongside.
That's right.
It means to fully understand what somebody's pain in that moment was. And you can only do that if you stop and you listen. You don't wait your turn to talk. You may not even talk after.
Yeah, it's called active listening. It's a really valuable tool that I'm relearning myself.
It's really odd, because I speak a lot at conferences about podcasting, things like that, and that's one of the biggest questions I get. Besides, where do I host things? Is how do I be a good host? And I normally tell them to visit their local community college, maybe take a course in extemporaneous speaking.
Yeah.
Like you said, the art of storytelling. Here is a random object. Tell me a story for 5 minutes.
Yeah. That also engages so many other faculties that we negated over the last 20 years of my experience from what I've been seeing, kind of the transfer of engagement, but it's also that just lack of imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, even with inside of the realm of movies and television, it's like it feels like they're regurgitating the same 10 stories over and over again. And it's like it. Guys, where's the creativity here? That's kind of
that's exactly what they are doing, Aaron. There's no.
So it's and every now and then I'm surprised because there is an occasional new story being added. Yep. But I was just reading this really cool, or should I say, listening to an audiobook on it about the 10 basic archetypes of stories.
Yep.
And it's a really interesting read because it basically lays out to you these 10 basic archetypes of storytelling, or stories that exist within inside of our world. But within inside of those 10 basic archetypes, you have the infinite combinations of those possibilities.
Yeah.
So, people often, and from what I've read or listened to in this audiobook and from my own experience, is we're only really sticking into the 10 in most of our modern, television and, movies. Yeah. And it's there's so much more out there that you could literally turn into fantastical stories.
Oh, yeah.
That, some authors and people writing books are doing. But in the visual media realm of things, it just feels like they're playing over those 10 archetypes over and over again.
Well, and those are all basically based on the work of Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, things like that. That is a lot of what the teachings and principles of Star Wars was constructed on. It really teaches the archetypal. At least Joseph Campbell gets into the philosophy of the archetypal hero and what it is. And the issue is our attention span has gotten so short we've stopped seeing that cycle all the way through.
That's right.
We look for the fulfillment of the first few parts, but we don't remember that, hey, that hero's always flawed.
Yeah.
I love Star Wars, don't get me wrong, one of my favorite things in the world, but I'm here to drop a knowledge bomb on you folks. The real lesson of Star Wars is pretty much any male in the Skywalker line is a whiner. The women are baller, dude. They will come up and smack you in the face. The men, every single one of them are selfish whiners.
Yeah.
That's the lesson. I just summed up 9 movies for you. But it's the fact that without them being the whiner, they don't complete that cycle. They don't have the hero's failure in there for the point of redemption. And I think that's where most people are getting short-circuited. We look for that immediate fulfillment, that dopamine fix, like what you're saying with screens and stories and everything else. We're used to now we get things in 28-minute chunks. Yeah. You know, digestible things online, stuff like that. So, yeah, to have to go through a full cycle of emotion to figure out that somebody's good and bad, and that's the didactic, and they have to figure it out. It's tough, but sometimes, like I had a guy who owns a platform here in Austin tell me that that the metrics show better for listenership on shows that are 20 minutes. And I was like, okay. And he's like, well, you know, you should cut your shows. I'm like, no. You're
like, no, yeah, this is done for a reason.
Like Dudes and Beers, sometimes we talk about human trafficking, man. I can't even shine the surface of that topic in 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's vast. Yeah. If you're trying to pop it out in 30 minutes, it's just like, you're like, no, we didn't even touch the surface of the depth of this topic.
It's one of those, like, you really do have to curate your own audience as well and what you're trying to go for. And like you were saying earlier, as much as somebody is interviewing you to be the narrator, you are interviewing them to be their narrator as well. Is their material what you want to be putting out? Is that what you want to be associating your voice with?
Exactly. I've had to decline, books just, and it's nothing against the person, personally. It's just that, you have to really make sure that what you're engaging in is going to be something of high value and that you're proud to promote. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where, there's often when I run into, just people that are working at becoming better writers. And they're putting out books, which is good because it's good to be, experiencing that, putting out content, seeing how well they do. But it's also, for me, I have to be very decisive on, okay, well, I love where you're going with this. I just really feel like these are some of the places where you could improve. And every time that I've given that feedback to authors, I'm actually surprisingly, responded with, thank you. I often get people being, telling me that, oh, it's great. Yeah, put it out. And they're just fluffing your bunny, as I like to say it. And it's not really helpful when you're trying to grow as an artist, but also for someone that, like myself as a narrator, I want to make sure that I'm going to be putting out content that I can really get behind.
That's right.
And I think that's the importance.
That's right. And speaking of getting behind content, I want to thank you so much for surrendering a code for us. We will be absolutely giving away one free copy of the new book that Erin Miller has just narrated, Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away. It is available on audible.com. We'll be sharing the link inside of a Facebook post and doing a contest online to give that away.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm excited, and I'm always open to feedback, and anyone that does listen to the book or, ends up winning that free copy, please, you can find me at Seth Wordsmith on Instagram and on Facebook. And I'd love for, if you enjoy the book, to please give me your thoughts and insight to, parts that you enjoyed, or if you have any criticism, preferably constructive criticism, but I'm open to most things. And, just kind of letting me know what you thought about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And please keep it constructive, everybody. Other than that, my opinion, I can accept criticism. Opinions are worth 50 cents. That's a cup of coffee, man. Anybody with 50 cents can buy a cup of coffee.
That's right.
Right. So, but constructive criticism is absolutely welcome and helpful. And the fact that you even bring that up is great, because I love people that look for feedback, that look for comments on their stuff. Your work is amazingly well produced and recorded. So kudos to you. Like I said, as far as audio listening in that field, I've done a lot. And you have some great equipment. You were working with some good stuff to be producing that kind of quality and pumping it out there. So Good on you, my friend.
I also want to shout out Simon Baum, who helped me do the mix mastering in regards to that as well. I produced it, and Simon Baum kind of stepped in and was able to do the mix mastering for me on that. So I'm working with him as a team here in the future going forward too. So, and potentially going to be working with him on a new podcast series of live freeform storytelling.
Heck yeah. We definitely want to have you guys on to talk about that whenever it's up, ready to rock, everything else. One more time, give everybody those socials and what to look for on Audible. Yeah,
you can find me at Seth Wordsmith on both Facebook and Instagram. And you can find it through most of the digital platforms, Audible and Amazon. It's Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away, written by Chris Holmes and narrated by myself, Erin Miller. Please grab a copy, or hopefully apply to get that free copy from Christopher here. And I thank you all for listening, and I look forward to hearing your comments.
Absolutely. Please do hold the line for us real quick, Erin, while we close things out. While you were online checking out Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away, available on Audible, stop on by audibletrial.com first and sign up for your free Audible account. audibletrial.com/talking sound is the link that you want to use. You will get 30 days free. You can then listen to that book. You can listen to any book. What's really cool about Audible is you can trade books in, all kinds of stuff. So stop on by today. audibletrial.com/talking sound is the link. Light a Candle, Chase the Devil Away is the new book written by Chris Holmes and narrated by our good guest here, Erin Miller. Stop on by and check that out. Remember, folks, take care of yourselves out there right now. Take care of your hearing, and keep reaching for 11. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.